Hello again and welcome back to our course on PSE 15. In this section we're going to take a look at the very important subject of help. And although to some extent Adobe PSE, like many other pieces of software nowadays, relies very much on online help, and in fact the amount of help you can get, generally speaking, is quite restricted if you don't have a live internet connection, there is a big bonus with PSE 15 in that you get access to two very large PDF files that not only provide you with quite a bit of help, but can also act virtually as reference manuals on the two parts of PSE 15. And I'll tell you about those in a couple of minutes' time. I'm running the organizer at the moment. Let's take a look at the help. It's on the help menu. There are several options. Note the first one, Elements Organizer Help, has a keyboard shortcut, F1. For any options with keyboard shortcuts, they'll normally be shown on the menu like this, and I'll be talking about keyboard shortcuts in a couple of sections from now. If I click on Elements Organizer Help, it takes me to the Elements Organizer Help. The help is arranged under a number of topics. So for instance, there's one here, Understanding the User Interface. And from there I have a list of other topics. If I choose one of those, such as shortcut keys for finding photos, it'll take me through to the relevant help page. And this is browser based help, so when I've finished reading what I need to read, I can use the back button to take me back to that Elements Organizer Help home page again. I'm going to leave you to try out many of these topics. It's really worth spending a little bit of time just flicking your way through, looking at some of these topics, particularly after we've covered some of the basics. But note that the help here does include topics like getting started, so you might find it useful to cover some of these quite early on. But there's one link on this page that I do want you to follow, and that's this one, Help Manual PDF. Because this is the one that gives you access to the Elements Organizer PDF. It's just over 9 megabytes in size. It's quite a big file, but once you've downloaded it and saved it on your device, you have in effect a sort of offline help system and a very useful reference manual as well. So once it's downloaded, you can save it to your device. It's arranged in chapters and it's pretty good. There's about 150 pages, just under 150 pages in this document. And again, I do suggest you take some time to work your way through this. Within the PDF reader that I'm using, there is a facility to search for particular topics. So although it's not arranged in quite the way that regular help would be, the search facility certainly makes it easy to find any topics that you need. There is an equivalent manual for the editor, and you can access that in a similar way from the editor. So I'm going to close that for the moment, and meanwhile back in the organizer, let's take a look at something else on the help menu. Now if I click on Getting Started with Photoshop Elements, that takes me specifically to a Getting Started part of the Adobe website. And again, it's very, very useful to follow some of these links and to see what other material is available there. Another one that's very useful, the third one there, is Key Concepts. Now these concepts are photographic concepts, and if you're not familiar with things like anti-aliasing, using adjustment layers, raster and vector image types and so on, although I'll be explaining many of these concepts as we go along, there may be topics that I don't cover and you may find that you need an alternative explanation. This can be very useful if I use a photographic term that you don't fully understand. Once you're into the Adobe PSE help system, you'll normally see a search facility, and this can give you access to help which is not necessarily easily accessible from the menu system, if you like, from the top level help pages. So if, for example, I wanted to find help on a particular aspect of lighting, I might enter the key term there, lighting, and hit the enter key. And what I can see now is a page full of links to help topics. Now at any time I can follow one of these. So for example, Photoshop Elements Help, Adjusting Shadows and Light. I can click on that topic. That gives me information about adjusting shadows and light in PSE. If I go back, also note on the right that there is a list of products, and if I want to filter the help to get the help that only applies to a particular product, I can use the filters on the right. If you look at the filters on the right at the moment, for example, you'll see that one of them is After Effects, and if I only wanted to see lighting help related to After Effects, I could check that here and it will be filtered just for the product After Effects. If what I want is Photoshop Elements and Photoshop Elements isn't listed here, I can actually type in Photoshop Elements, hit enter, and now what I can see is lighting related to Photoshop Elements. Note that I still have After Effects checked, so if I uncheck that, I can narrow the filter down to Photoshop Elements in general or the Photoshop Elements editor in particular. So it's possible to sort of home in on the specific product help that you want. I'm back in the organizer now, and I'm going to take a look at some of those other help topics. Support is an important link, and that takes you through to Photoshop Elements support. You can access many other useful areas of adobe.com here which are useful to Photoshop Elements. So for instance, there's a link here to troubleshoot installation that I mentioned earlier on in the course. And there are also some very popular topics, so things like resizing, help on resizing. Over on the right you've got links to the Photoshop Elements FAQ and the system requirements. You also have access to the feature request area and bug reporting. So if you'd like to see a particular feature added to PSE, or you'd like to report what you suspect is a bug, you can do that here. You can also ask the Photoshop Elements community for help. There's a very active and useful Photoshop Elements community, and the forums will enable you to ask for help, maybe make suggestions, maybe even answer other people's questions about Photoshop Elements. And also there's a link here to contact Adobe themselves if you need support. Let's look at the last few options on the help menu. Welcome screen gives you access again to the welcome screen, and if you want to go back to change your options for startup, you can do that from here. That's an easy way of accessing the welcome screen. About Elements Organizer will tell you exactly which version you're running and which build you're running. If you contact Adobe support or you use the community forums, you may be asked for exactly which build of PSE 15 you're running. The build number is right in the middle of this banner. Click on the banner to hide it again. Legal notices, well, there are the legal notices related to PSE 15. Show walkthrough screens will bring up, in this case, that Start Importing wizard that we're going to look at later on. System info is actually not only an important source of information about your system, but it also gives very useful information about the current catalogue, and I'll be referring to this later on. And then the final option on there is a very important one, and that is updates. I'm going to talk about updates later on, but it's important that you make sure that your installation of PSE 15 is up to date. You will normally set up PSE 15 to do a regular check for updates, and one or two of the updates you get, such as this one, which is outstanding on my system, Photoshop Camera Raw. I'll talk to you about that later on as well. So I need to get this update done on my system. I'm going to do that just to finish off this section. What I'd like you to do now is, of course, to check for any updates on your installation and make sure they're carried out. Now I want you to go into the editor and check the help on the editor. And the other thing I'd like you to do, apart from checking all of the various options on the help menu, is to make sure that you've also downloaded the PDF file for the editor. That's the end of this section. I'll see you in the next one.